I was really screwing that up at the beginning, thinking the whole thing was flexible. And you reminded me that no, the core thing can remain the same. And what are the flexible elements? Let's play with those, but really pushing on brainstorming what the flexible elements can be depending on who you're speaking to. So that was a big one for me, because then I don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. And you can create this one asset that, I mean, I think I've told you this, but is, it's made me, almost $100,000 so far. So it's like, it's in a year. So I think, I wasn't thinking about that it would be that flexible, but it really can be.
This is the podcast for the entrepreneur who wants to make a big impact, who doesn't shy away from hard work, but also wants to enjoy life along the way. Hi, I'm Heather Sager, former executive turned entrepreneur, and I've spent the last 20 years working with premium brands on sales, marketing, and communication. And I've learned that when you become a magnet with your message, you only need a hint of hustle to achieve your goals. Get ready to be inspired and ignited each week with tangible strategies on sales, speaking, marketing, and so much more. This is the Hint of Hustle podcast. Let's go. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode. I'm so thrilled you're here. It is the month of March, which is very special because it is officially my birthday month. It is my birthday month. And yes, I'm one of those very annoying people who celebrates their birthday all month, but I feel like I need to make a few caveats here. I say that I celebrate my birthday all month long, and my husband jokes all the time of, oh my gosh, it's birthday month. But I am not like crazy aggressive. And it's not actually, it's something that I say. It's not as much as something I do. And even if I were to do it, there's nothing wrong with that. But full disclaimer, one of the big reasons why I celebrate my birthday, we're going to get a little deep here very, very quickly into the episode. At the time of this episode airing, it has been 21 years and one day since since my mom last took her breath on this earth. Yeah, we're going a little dark and deep today. If you follow me on social or on my email list, you know this is something that I talk about openly, but my mom lost her battle with cancer a few days before my 18th birthday. And in fact, I laugh about it now, but I was the youngest of 6 kids. So I was the young one in the house. And my family was looking at days of the week, not dates. And her funeral almost got planned on my 18th birthday. So that's fun. Luckily, somebody did a little date check and that didn't happen. But as you can imagine, having your mom fighting cancer and then ultimately losing that fight just a few days before your birthday kind of puts a little bit of a rainy, dark cloud on your birthday. And if you've ever lost someone that you've loved, you know that as that anniversary comes around every year, it's hard. So since I turned 18 and every year after, I make a big frickin' deal of my birthday because what other choice is there? You deal with hard things that the only choice you have is to move forward and bring light with it. And the month of March is also my mom's birthday month. Her birthday is March 30th. So it's always thinking like my birthday, her birthday. We always were birthday twins when I was a kid. But it's when I celebrate and make this big deal out of my freaking birthday, it's because I am bringing lightness to the dark. So I feel like a little context there because I think it's one of those things that life sometimes it's really easy to think about all like the woohoo fun stuff that's happening, but life also has some very deep, painful pieces. And I think the tendency when you have a personal brand online is to hide those pieces and only talk about the bright sunshine, especially if you're trying to position yourself as an authority. There's this idea that we have to come across just strong and I don't know, whatever way, like there's a way that you think that you might have to be, but I've found that sharing different facets of your story really it reaches people in different ways. That's why a couple weeks ago I talk about public failure. It's why I make fun of myself all the time. It's why I talk about hard things like having a hearing loss or losing my mom really young. And I make a big freaking deal of my birthday, and I celebrate launching new programs. And I'm my biggest cheerleader. And I'm also the most open, real, and raw around what happens in life and in business. And part of me sharing, I guess, this with you is one, to make some small chit chat banter before today's awesome interview, but two, just to remind you that it's okay to be in two realities at the same time. If you're going through something hard and you're celebrating something big, or if you're feeling both simultaneously nervous and excited and just having two opposing feelings or two opposing experiences at one, that is to be human, my friend. And that's a very real thing. So telling you a little bit of that and a little bit of my story is actually perfect for today's guest. We have on today my friend Lindsay Rogers, and she is the CEO and founder of Raw Strategy, and she works with Olympic athletes on building their brand story and storytelling. She works with big brands. I don't know if I'm allowed to say who the brands are, so I won't, but some big freaking deals. I've known Lindsay for quite a few years. She's been through my program, and she's also hired me to work one-on-one to help her with some of her speaking. And I want to give you a taste around what's possible with speaking when you do consulting and higher ticket work. Last week, I had a really great example with Liz Wilcox sharing how she's spoken on more than 200 stages and on podcasts, sharing her story to build her $9 membership. Holy crap, was that not an inspiring interview or what? So freaking good. And this week, I want to showcase for you is if you do higher ticket consulting or coaching, or maybe you work with organizations or would like to at a broader scale, Lindsay's going to be a really great story to show you what's possible through paid speaking. Now, the difference between last week and this week is all of Lindsay's speaking opportunities have been paid. And at this point, 1 year ago, she had never been paid to speak. And you'll find out very soon that because of speaking, she's been paid very, very well in a very short amount of time. And she's now branded herself as a speaker. So without further ado, I want to pass it over to my extremely inspiring interview with Lindsay. All right, Lindsay, welcome officially back to the show. I'm so honored that you're here today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, welcome back. This is actually officially Lindsay's third appearance on the show. Y'all, you're going to love her episode around storytelling. If you're a new listener on the show, go back and listen to that. I'll link it to the show notes. But I also had Lindsay on for a bonus episode where I interviewed her and a couple other speakers on Instagram, and I put that recording. So you might be familiar with Lindsay's story, but my goodness, what you have done with speaking in a very short amount of time is just, it's been inspiring for me. And I wanted people to hear it and just talk about the impact that speaking can have in your business, in your life, and really what that could look like. So why don't we start by talking about, Lindsay, what is your business and how do you help people?
Yeah, sure. So my business is called Raw Strategy, and I have 3 different programs that I run people through. And generally speaking, I work with primarily athletes, leaders within a corporate structure, and then entrepreneurs on using storytelling and messaging strategies to position them for growth. So for athletes, it's a little bit more around how do you create a really powerful, impactful story so you can connect to sponsors and potential partners. And then for leaders, it's a little bit different where we are trying to craft really strong and powerful messages so that teams follow them and that they start to kind of elevate their perception in the marketplace to attract clients, et cetera. So it's awesome. I do a lot of one-on-one work. I do a lot of workshops and group work. So I love it. It's really fun.
It's cool. And you work with some really amazing people too, especially with like personal brands. When you think about athletes, helping someone take like their the story of like why they do the thing that they do and put that into life. Like it is so freaking, it's magical. It is very magical. I am curious. Let's call this out for a moment. Someone who tells stories for a living, you teach people to tell their stories. What really was it that made you raise your hand of going, I need somebody to help me tell my story?
It's such a good question. Well, I think there's sort of that thing of the cobbler's kids have no shoes, where you do this so much for other people, and yet, or I do it so much for other people, and yet when it comes to me, I get so focused on the details that I share with other people that I can't get away from it. I can't get away from the details. So sometimes it's helpful to have someone else to bounce things off of. And also, I think there was this a little bit for me. I mean, you know this, but it was a little bit of like ready, fire, aim for me, where I kind of like jumped into the fire thinking, yeah, I can do this. Like I want to have, speaking as part of my business. And then as soon as I got asked to speak, it was like, oh God, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do with my body. I don't know what to do with my brain. I don't really know what my message is on a stage compared to in marketing materials, because those are two very different things. And they're two very different things when you write them versus speaking them. And so I come from a journalism background. I was a journalist, freelance writer, editor, all the things. And so I have a tendency to be a little verbose on writing. And so I learned really quickly working with you that the written version is very different than the out loud, say it in front of people version. But I didn't really know how to pull those two apart and tease them apart and really get clear on, okay, what's the clean, concise, kind of impactful version using your voice, and how do you use your voice? How do you use your body? Like I didn't know any of that stuff. I know the written side. So yeah. that's when I came crying to you.
Yeah, you raised your hand. Now, here's what's fascinating. So last week, I shared the story with Liz, who was using speaking proactively to create leads in her business and to generate her audience. For you, your speaking was really around speaking on stages as a paid revenue source. And that first speaking gig you mentioned around like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? That was a paid speaking opportunity, right?
Every single one I've done has been paid. I've never spoken for free. And I originally, so the way that happened is, and I tell this to people because I think it's sort of important when you start having a lot of success, like with clients, let's say, and you start to see this transformation, what happens is that they want you in different parts of their life, right? So I started getting asked by clients, companies, to come speak at different events. So it was, Team USA speaking, with them in DC. It was, this big insurance company bringing me all over the country, et cetera, et cetera. So I have never done a speaking engagement and not gotten paid. And to be totally honest, I shot for the stars at the beginning and just said, I'm going to put a high mark on this and just see if they say no. And not one of them has said no. And so I say that because if you value what you do and you're getting some sort of transformation for people, like one-on-one or a small group, when you get on stage, consider that like that, you're doing that for people in that environment also. So don't be shy to ask for what you're worth. So that's my experience.
I love that you said this. I recently said in one of the workshops I did, the 5-figure speaker workshop, it's one of my private trainings. I talk about how you get paid to the level of the problems you solve. 100%. And one of the things that you've done really, really well is your goal from the get-go was, I want to get paid to speak. Now, whether or not you'd had that opportunity on your plate, you knew that was a revenue model you wanted in your business. And we'll talk about the impact of that here in a moment. But I think this is a very real thing. A lot of people think like it's either I have to like speak for free to earn the right to get paid, or I have to just do a ton of free speaking and get paid somehow on the back end. And there really are so many different business models that you can leverage speaking for. So I just love saying this example because so many people have the goal of, I do want to get paid to speak. And you don't have to wait for someone to like bestow you upon this like medal of honor that you're now qualified to speak. Although we highly encourage you work with a speaking coach because that helps. But that was a goal that you had and you made it happen. So let's talk about that initial process. You raised your hand and said, all right, I have this speaking event. I want to get my ish together in this talk. Let's talk about that initial process. So we started working together inside a group program. Full disclaimer, I've also worked with Lindsay one-on-one since on her talk, as she's really elevated into the paid speaking category. But let's go back to the beginning there. What did you notice at the beginning? Was it easier or harder, or what was that experience like getting the ideas out of your head, not in the written form, but out of your freaking mouth?
Oh, girl. It was, I had to completely dismantle myself from the inside out, where it felt like a deep therapy session where there were so many nerves that came up. There were so many questions around, is this what I should be saying? Is this meaningful? What do I even deserve to be on this stage? Like all these internal things came rushing to the surface that kind of sidelined my ability to actually do it. Like I was questioning if I was
We need to address this piece here is that was a new thing for you because
totally.
you're very confident and very competent in your expertise. So the fact that those things came in, I remember us talking about this, you were like, this is something that happens to other people. It doesn't happen to me, right? So let's talk about that piece. Like that hit you out of left field, right?
Completely out of left field. And I'm a confident person. I'm an athlete. I set goals, I achieve them like that. That is kind of who I think I am. And then I've heard that people say their fear of, like, through, I think there's research has been done when people say their fear of public speaking is greater than their fear of death. And I think I hit that point where I was like, oh my gosh, this feels like I am exposing the deepest, darkest parts of me. I've never felt this exposed in my life. And I'm a confident person one-on-one and in my group coaching programs and all that. But when I'm on a stage with people who I've either never met, or even worse, people I know really well, that's worse, by the way, that's even harder.
I agree.
I felt like there was something that came up for me that I just didn't anticipate and I didn't know was part of me. So it was something that I actually had to face. I honestly, I talked to a therapist about it. I talked to you about it. I talked to our group about it. And I realized I was really not alone. Like, this is a thing that people, they strive for, but as soon as you're in that hot seat, it feels like sheer terror. So yeah, that was my reality.
It is. And you know what I've learned talking with clients, you mentioned a very experienced process. A joke that a lot of my private clients say is like, Heather, it's like you're my communication therapist, which we laugh about. And we love therapy. I am not a therapist by any means or like trying to compare it. But there is this thing that comes out when you have an opportunity in front of you. It's almost like this, like, oh my gosh, I'm here. And what I see so often, especially with people who have really established brands, really established expertise, it's almost like speaking on stage is even riskier because it's, you know, what you do is so good, but now it's so public. It creates this gap of like, but what if I don't sound as intelligent as I know I am? What if it doesn't come out right, or they think I'm an idiot, or God forbid they find out that I don't know what I'm doing, but I do know what I'm doing, but it doesn't feel like I know what I'm doing. Like there's this weird, like all those things, those were coming up for you too.
Yeah. And I think that the thing for me is that you don't have a crutch. Like if you're like speaking with a client on Zoom, or you've got notes somewhere, you have a lot of crutches. You can pause, you can take breaths, you can listen to them for a little while. But when you're on a stage, all of those crutches go away. You don't have like a set, or I don't like to use like a set of notes in front of me, because I don't think you kind of coach people against that too. But you kind of have to you're a little bit bare, you're a little bit naked up there. And so I think you have to get comfortable trusting yourself. And what I found was so helpful for me is, and this is part of your process, but also like I went rogue too, but I would write literally my entire talk out, every single word. And I would walk around my neighborhood for 2-3 hours and I would just say the entire thing. And I would be staring at the notes. And then I would do the second version, where I would take that and I would like parse it down to, I don't know, 2 pages of notes. And then I would take that and it would just be slides. And so I would have to go through this process where I started to actually trust myself and trust that I knew this stuff. But what happens, I think, when you get on stage is you lose that trust in yourself. You lose that, like, when the crutches get taken away, the trust gets taken away in yourself. So I think for me, that was a big thing I needed to get over. And for some people, there's a process there. For some people, it's time. But I think you do a really good job of, getting people to actually speak it, because that's the other crutch for me, is just when I read things, I feel like relaxed and confident. And when I just say them and trust myself that I know it, I can get nervous. So I think for different people, there's different challenges.
There absolutely is. By the way, you didn't go rogue. You actually did exactly what you needed to do. I think what a lot of people do, and this is what I noticed with other speaking programs or other programs in general, people like rest on, here's the way I did it. So this is the best way. And I'm a big fan of, and this is could also be a hot button, just to warn anyone who's thinking about joining my program or learning from me, is I'm a stickler that says, I'm going to give you some examples, but also I'm going to make you think critically and figure this out for yourself. I'll give you the container to do it safely, but you have to learn how to trust yourself and learn how to communicate your expertise in your own way. And part of that process, what you just talked about, I call this the script-ish process. There's actually 3 different ways that people get that out of their head and become confident in that leap. So some of it is you start with scripting. Some of it is reverse scripting. Some of it is like fully bullet point. But there are 3 different types of people that prep. You went through the script backwards process, which is very, very normal. And a lot of people need that, especially people who feel empowered by written word. Other people, like for me, for example, I go through that process just to write it out, but then I have to throw it away because it gives me anxiety, because my perfectionism comes in that if I don't say it the way I wrote it, it's wrong. Totally. And then I malfunction. So you have to figure out your style, and I help people do that. But it's that leap between okay, I have the plan, and then the actual stages there, that's pretty scary. So what helped you make that leap, even though it was scary, right? Even though you had to go there, what was it, whether about the talk or about the process, that helped you bridge that gap?
Couple things, I think, in particular. One is that I had to simplify, because what I had to realize is that the people that I'm speaking in front of don't know what I'm talking about. And so I have a tendency, as I said, to kind of be verbose and complicated. And so I really have to work hard at being really clear and really simple, and also taking breath and time, because I want to fit it all in. And I know this is common too. So I try to fit so much in that it complicates the message. And so for me, I think one of the things I had to back out of, and one of the problems with writing the full script, is you can really complicate things when you write it out. And so when you speak it out, when I spoke it out, and when in our private one-on-one sessions, you would stop me and say, okay, what are you trying to say here? And so it would force me to kind of undo the complications and really just get clear and simple. And I think when you go through your bucketizing method and writing, I'll turn my camera around if you want, but I go through this process of, I've used zillions of Post-it notes at this point for so many different things, but it really helps me get it out, move it around. Sometimes I quite literally put it on the ground and walk my talk through those pieces of paper. So I'll be okay, I'm right here, I'm starting, and I'm physically going to take a step into the next thing I'm going to say. Yes. Yep. And it kind of makes me get in my body a little bit more. So I think that was the other thing, is that you can spend so much time in your brain overcomplicating the process, and am I talking about the right thing that goes next? And what did help me is physically walking and talking out loud, but physically moving from one stage to the next when it's laid out on my floor. Yeah. And then I would move the piece where I was I can't take that step right now. So the physicality of it was a shock to the system for me. And the more I moved, the better I felt. I don't even know if I'm answering your question at this point.
No, first of all, I'm going to unpack a couple things that you just said. So the bucketizing process that Lindsay's talking about is it sounds super fancy. It does not sound fancy, but essentially it's this idea that we all suffer from this curse of knowledge, where we're so close to our information. It's hard for us to uncomplicate it, to simplify it, but that's what's required for other people to follow it. So in a similar way, around how Marie Kondo teaches you how to simplify your home. Side note to call out, recently, she was quoted as saying she's given up that simplification because now she has 3 kids and she can't keep her house tidy.
See, now I like her more.
For all parents, we're okay, thank you for the relatable factor. Finally. Anyways,
finally, I like you.
Yeah, we Marie Kondo your brain, your ideas. And the question isn't, does this spark joy? The question is, does this add value to your core message? And that's what we do, which, by the way, at the time of this recording, we are now live in my Becoming the Known Authority free training happening. I'll talk a little bit about that in there. So if you want to learn more about this bucketizing process and the simplification, be sure that you're in for that free training. It's in the show notes. But you talked about that. But I also I didn't know you were going to go here. I love that you brought up the idea of the physicality.
Mhm.
This has been instrumental in my training, and I'm so glad that you picked up on this, is the physically walking your space and putting yourself in your content. It sounds very, very weird. For some reason, what's coming to mind for me is like the warped reality of Alice in Wonderland as you're talking about
Yeah.
this. But it's this like you have to put yourself in your content and think about it in different zones, in different sections, and you
Totally.
train your brain to be able to then do that seamlessly on a stage. Like I love that you brought that up. I cannot speak like higher enough of this need to, if you're going to be a speaker, you have to practice speaking and moving at the same time. So I love
Yeah.
that you brought that up. That was very tangible.
Well, and I think that there's something a long time ago, I listened to this guy. I think that he competed in the national memory competition, whatever it was. And he talked about this idea of when you need to remember something, you need to put it in a room. You need to physically walk into the room. So if you need to remember, a lamp, a table, a wallet, and whatever it is
Yeah.
that you're trying to remember, and maybe you're trying to remember 50 different things, he said, put it in a room and physically walk between the rooms so you can start to remember it. And it came up for me when I keep looking at my floor because this is where it happened. But I thought about that when I literally like physically walked to the next place. And so it can be a neat tool for people to say, okay, if I'm not remembering like the sections of my talk, I'm going to close my eyes and figure out what does that next room look like? How am I walking through a house? And in each room, I have a different topic or I'm moving to the next phase. So anyway, it's that physicality is I completely agree with you. It's enormous. And to embody kind of your talk, because it is so physical, like your voice is like outside of you, right? Like your breathing is inside of you, but your voice is actually outside of you. So to embody that kind of physicality of like, I'm going to move between rooms, I'm going to move in phases of my talk, it can help. And I think it can help calm the nerves a little bit because it feels like you
Yeah.
have control.
Yeah. Okay. That is so freaking good. Let's talk about content. So
Yeah.
for you inside our program, you created your signature talk and you have now used it multiple times. I do remember one specific scenario. Let's see if you'll let me go here,
I know
where
what you're gonna say.
you tried to change your talk. You're like, oh, it's a different group. I got to change it. Let's talk about that. So your signature talk that you created, just share a little bit about that and the kind of the creation process and how you have used that since.
Yeah. So in your program, I went through your process, obviously, and I kind of went rapid fire through it because I had such a short timeline. So, which by the way is really helpful.
Yeah.
I know you have like a concentrated program coming up, and I would say, hell yeah, that's almost better because it forces you to finish. So I work very well when my back is up against a wall. So I had a very short timeline, and I created something where it was for the immediate need was to create a signature talk for two different things, totally different audiences. And so I created those two things within your program. But then since then, I've been asked to speak at multiple different groups that are there's some overlap, but not a ton. So what you're talking about is when I came to you and said, oh my God, totally different group. I need to like scrap everything. And you kind of looked at me and said, why? Like this message sort of transcends. Why are you doing this to yourself? And I think it was a good lesson for me to, again, I have a tendency to overcomplicate things. So it was a good reminder for me to say, okay, what is universal about the talk that you're giving? And it's a good question for people to ask if they do have one that can kind of transcend industries or transcend groups, is, what are the elements that do transcend, and then what are the elements that you can manipulate to be really powerful for that group. So when you're creating your signature talk, you sort of have those sections, right? Where section one, maybe you change the intro story where it's a little bit more relevant to that audience. The core is the same, and maybe you change the very end. So just being aware of like what the flexible elements of your signature talk are, and then what's the core. And so I think I was really screwing that up at the beginning, thinking the whole thing was flexible. And you reminded me that no, the core thing can remain the same. And what are the flexible elements? Let's play with those. And then you helped me figure out, like, okay, close your eyes and, what are you feeling when, you think of the time you're most embarrassed? I think you actually asked me that question. But really pushing on brainstorming what the flexible elements can be depending on who you're speaking to. So that was a big one for me, because then I don't have to reinvent the wheel over and over again. And you can create this one asset that, I think I've told you this, but it's made me, almost $100,000 so far. So it's like, it's in a year. So I think, I wasn't thinking about that it would be that flexible, but it really can be.
Yeah. I love that you just said that so quietly, like, no, like just very nonchalant. It's made me like $100,000 in the last year from one talk, right? From one talk.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is freaking incredible. It is freaking incredible. Most, just to give some, I don't remember the exact stat. I saw a report from another speaking organization that works with professional speakers, but the amount of public speakers that make over, 15, 20 grand a year is like, most public speakers are struggling trying to get started. They haven't even got paid yet. So the idea that you were able to create a talk, yes, you had a paid speaking gig, but then you use that talk to catapult yourself forward, doing the speaking snowball with referrals, leveraging client relationships for more referrals. That's huge. Like, hope that you're giving yourself some, like, I'm freaking badassy.
Oh, well, you always, when you achieve this thing that you think you couldn't have, I just moved the goalpost, which is not,
yeah,
I need to look back. But I also, going back to what you said at the very beginning, where really focusing your signature talk on like a deep pain that people have and giving them like where they are now and then where they can be.
Yeah.
That I think is ultimately why I was able to make money on these talks, is because there's like a mini transformation they experience right then and there. And then there's like takeaways later they can deal with. But having that pain and really, really knowing what that is, I think is really, really important.
And it's okay. I love that you brought up this pain piece, because instantly when I hear that, I know a lot of people are like, oh, but I don't want to be like the negative person, or I want to bring the light. I want to help them. I want to bring the joy. One of the things we talk about is balance. So in the opening of a signature talk, there is this tension that has to happen between pain and possibility. And there is an actual equation between how much you lean into both so that they work in tandem, and so that you're branding your message in a way that serves people, right? You're not just like the want, point out the pain. It's actually, it's about the possibility that it creates. So I love that you brought it up. I also, this idea when we talked about the flexibility of a talk, this I think is really important for people, because I think a lot of people might be thinking like, well, a signature talk, like, do I have something that's signature? Do I have something big enough to say? Like, am I worthy of this big kind of talk thing? But a signature is just kind of that starting point, or what you want to be known for. It's taking your experience and packaging it up. So I'm curious for you, did you have an intention of having a signature talk, or were you like, let me just get something started and then I'll grow from it?
B. It was very much, I just need this thing because I'm being asked to do this thing. So I just need it. And then it sort of opened the possibility for me. I was like, oh, dang, like I did that. I can't believe I survived the first one. And so it gave me this confidence of like, oh, maybe this is like an element of my business I can add, because I don't think before, like going through this process with you, I didn't have the confidence to even think that was a possibility. So I think that is, I think that was a big thing that you and the program gave me, is just sheer confidence. And because I think when you're going at it alone, it's like, am I doing this right? Or like, what section am I in? Or do I have a section? Or what's the cadence? Or there's no answers to that. So I think even having like that clarity kind of brings things down, and also just gives you this sense of like, this is not just a one-off experience. It can become a long-term asset for you in your business. And I just didn't anticipate it being that powerful. Yeah.
What would you, kind of on that note, what would you say was the most unexpected thing you gained from working on your speaking skills?
I would say a couple different things. One is it connected me a little bit deeper to the reason I am in business. Because when I when I saw people in the audience raising their hands, and I tend to do a little bit of like workshoppiness in my talks where I'll ask people to come with a version of their story and then I'll workshop it in front of them. When I started to see people have this, like, they relaxed their shoulders, their eyes opened wide, they saw a possibility. And I think it really made me feel like, oh, I'm doing the right thing. I'm on the right path. It's almost giving me more feedback than I really even knew I needed. But it made me clear on the why, like why I'm doing what I'm doing. Because, you get in your own head so much of your business and you're figuring out Kajabi and your email service provider and writing things and sales pages and all the things. And then to stand in front of people and have people react to you and your message and what you're saying, and these little transformations that people have just made me feel like, okay, Linz, you're doing what you should be doing. So I would say that was a little unexpected for me.
Yeah, that's like deep shit.
Yeah, it is. It is. I'm not known for my lightheartedness.
Yeah, I love that though. It is. And when you talk about that workshop-y thing, right? I love how you phrase that. And I love that, right? Being able to do your magic with someone in front of a live audience, like that is just incredible. And it really speaks to this idea that when you're really good at what you do, when you're focused on turning on a light bulb for the one person in front of you or the group in front of you and just serving the crap out of them in a way that's going to be the most helpful, things work out. Like you become so desirable, because I talked about this in my last week's interview with Liz Wilcox. We talked about how a lot of people get this glint in their eye around speaking on stages because they want to be popular. They want to be that name and that face. But the ones who actually do it are the ones who focus on the person in front of them. And I think you have exemplified that so beautifully well. What advice would you give for anyone else who maybe has that glint, but they have that heart of service? Where should they focus? Like any advice or words of wisdom for them if they're just getting started?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I think was informative for me is quite literally asking, like going through questions with people that you feel like you want to be serving, and not being afraid to ask the not lightweight fluffy questions, but like the deep questions of, where do you want to go? What has worked? What are you afraid of? Like all of these things, because that can sort of give you this sense of that kind of pain versus optimism and possibility piece. And I think the deeper you understand that, the more you can stand on stage and riff, the more you can have flexibility in your talk, because there's a lot of these little, and when I say pain, I mean, I'm not saying physically, they're actually in pain, but things that they want to have happen in their lives that they don't have now. So that can be a pain. But I think when people really deeply understand that is when you start to move from someone who's like mildly interesting to someone who can have like a really profound impact on other people. And I often find, I don't know if you have experienced this, but I find that, when I was younger, for example, I was just about like getting the project, having the, big name client on my website, and that felt like success. And, I don't know, a handful of years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I started doing that shift to like, what do people actually want to experience? Like, what is the thing that I can get them that they want and they need? And again, if you can do that research, and for me, it took literally 2 years, like to really figure that out and put it into words in a program that people want to participate in. Like, give yourself some space to figure that out, because that is for me, the number one thing that completely transformed my business and gave me the confidence to call you and create something that I'm like, exposed on a stage sharing, is understanding like what people want, what they care about, what they fear, all those. That's the biggest piece for sure. And actually caring.
I love this so much. I'm getting chills and I have the shittiest grin on my face ever, because what you just said is the whole focus of this free training that I have going on right now. It's called Becoming the Known Authority. And the secret to becoming known is knowing who you serve.
Ooh, love it.
Like that is that you just explained that so beautifully. You didn't even know that was the theme because we're recording this before that training comes out. But
Yeah.
that is the thing, is when, if you want to become the known authority, but you're so focused on, do I sound smart? Do I like have something great? Is my story good enough? Like all those things, which I know nobody's outwardly admitting that we're thinking so much about ourselves, but we all are. But that secret to becoming that known authority is that what you talk about, knowing your person and their problems and what they want, knowing that so well, it becomes second nature.
Mhm.
That's what this is really about. And then having the confidence to articulate it on the fly, both intentionally and reactive. Like, oh my gosh, put that in a big freaking bow, Lindsay. Like
Yeah.
you nailed it. Like you
Good. Well, and I'm just going to add one other tidbit to that, because this is the other thing that I have not only experienced for me, but I also watch my clients do this, is that they think it has to be like earth shattering. And what I always say to my clients, and I had to give myself this speech too, and you probably gave me a speech too, was that the more pedestrian it is, the more everyday it is, the more easily understandable and digestible from other people because they've been through it and it feels really relatable, the more you're going to be able to transform them into something new.
Yeah.
So I would say don't go too crazy and high level and you're going to like wow people to that extent, because it's going to become unrelatable. So make it pedestrian, make it something that is every day that people experience on the regular.
Yeah. Well, great example of that. We giggled over Marie Kondo, right? We both were like, hallelujah, around her having 3 kids now and being like, maybe we don't have to be tidy all the time. It makes it more relatable. And I think that's what's interesting, especially for those who are in the online marketing space. There are people in the space who come across pretty perfect. And while we're like, can appreciate them, what I find with most people that I serve is what they appreciate more is the people who keep it real, not real in like a super scrappy, unprofessional way, but like real. They're relatable and they're polished. And I love what you said. In fact, anyone, and this happens in every time I teach around of the program, everyone always comes thinking that they have to have this big earth shattering idea, or they have to be tackling this big grandiose, like change the world type of thing. And y'all, world change happens from one little tiny thing at a time. It's this ripple effect that compounds. So what the first thing we do is we anchor your problem down to the ground so that it's tangible. That's what people want, is they want tangible and inspirational. And that's exactly what a signature talk does. So I freaking love that you brought that up. Is there any other, when you think about just the ripple effect of you having a signature talk and adding speaking to your business, anything else that's on your mind that you'd love to share?
Yeah, I will say, welcome opportunities that feel a little bit outside of where you had planned to go. So meaning I started being asked to speak to groups that I never ever thought were in my vortex. And it has surprised me in a way where I'm still learning about like new types of organizations or new areas of organizations, or like an HR group is really, a big kind of target for me now. And I never anticipated that. So if people are coming to you and saying, hey, this would be an interesting place to put your message, like, would you be interested in sharing it with us? Don't be afraid to adapt to those new places that you just did not plan on going. And obviously there's boundaries. You have to place your own boundaries, but I've been really pleasantly surprised by new types of groups that are finding me just through referral and all that are so fascinating to me and so outside of what I had planned for 2022 or 2023. And because of that, it has opened up so many possibilities in my business and just a ton more revenue. Like I've shared this with you privately, but there's just so many more opportunities have come up because I have been in front of a lot of different types of groups. And yeah, to welcome that with open arms, I think it's an exciting piece of having a talk, being in front of people, showing that you are an authority, even if it's a tiny little niche like mine. If you're an authority in that tiny little niche, people are going to come to you over and over and over again. So I guess that's what I would share, is like it is ballooned my business in ways that I did not expect.
I love that advice of staying open. I think a lot of times people sometimes have their picture around what they either want their business to look like, or specific to speaking, they have a stage in mind. And hands down, the most common thing that I see is people come into mind going like, I don't even know what stage I want to speak on. I don't even know what's available. So they put like Oprah, like, or some like very specific stage in mind. And what I love seeing is when people's eyes get open to just how many different opportunities are out there and are paying opportunities, and people seeking quality educators to come in and inspire their group. It's just like a whole new world. And like you deserve to live in that world, girl. I am so freaking proud of you. You're doing amazing things. And what's the coolest part about what you do, but one of the many cool things, is the fact that what you teach people to do is you share your stories and equip them to do the same. So the sheer ripple effect that happens when you take the stage, it's so, so beautiful. And you are changing the world from your corner of the internet and stage. And I'm just so grateful for you and so excited for everyone who crosses your path.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I will say to everyone listening, I would not be here without you from multiple ways. I mean, literally holding my hand emotionally, holding my hand intellectually, holding my hand from a message standpoint, and grounding me in what's important. It was far more, and I've said this to you before, it was far more than creating a signature talk. It was really kind of a big experience for me. And so I hats off to you, my dear. And everything that you do is profound for other people. It changes people's lives in ways far more than financial. So
beautiful. Look at this big love fest on the podcast. Also, just to clarify, in case your all's earbuds went out, she said intellectual, not holding her hand sexual. Like,
yikes.
Feel the need to clarify in case Zoom clipped that one. Awesome. Lindsay, you're amazing. As I mentioned before, y'all, you should learn storytelling from Lindsay. You can go back to a throwback episode, which was in like 2020. So you can laugh because you'll actually hear the difference in both of our voices in the span of 2.5 years. You'll hear me sound differently. You'll hear Lindsay talk about what she does differently. And that is growth at its finest. So I actually love going back to throwback episodes. So learn more about storytelling specifically on that one. We'll link it in the show notes. Lindsay, where's the best place for people to stay connected with you and learn more about what you do?
Yeah, so I would say my website kind of has everything. So it's rawstrategy.net. And there's, drop downs for all the programs, social, all that stuff is on there. So reach out if you have any questions. I'm here to help.
Yeah, Lindsay is she's also I love following you on social because you actually catalog all of your speaking events and kind of take us back behind the scenes. So be sure to connect with Lindsay. A lot of love for today's episode if it resonated with you. Thanks for being here, Lindsay. Y'all, thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope it has served you well, and we will see you next week.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for listening to another episode of the Hint of Hustle podcast. If you're in a season of hustle, consider this the permission slip you didn't need to take a beat. Go on a walk, stretch, call a friend, go reheat that coffee for the 4th time and actually drink it. Because those big dreams you're chasing, they require the best version of you. And if those goals include expanding your audience, establishing your industry credibility, and selling your premium price programs, the best way to tackle this is through speaking. Your voice is your best brand asset, and we'll teach you how to use it as a marketing tool. Head on over to thespeakercode.com/start, and I'll see you there.